On the day of her wedding, my ruthless mother-in-law shamed me before all my relatives. "You're merely the gardener's kid," she spat with disdain. "My boy deserves someone of equal standing, not some penniless outsider who has no place in our circle." Yet she could never have foreseen the events that unfolded several months afterward. Imani Thorne carefully adjusted the pleats of her modest bridal dress. Her fingers shook slightly as she gazed at her image in the mirror of the modest chapel's preparation area, where she had been stationed to prepare alone. The pale material felt gentle against her skin, though it lacked the luxury of satin or couture labels. It was a garment her mother had crafted with painstaking care and affection. "This will do," she repeated to herself silently. Still, inwardly, the stark contrast between her background and that of Elias Aworth weighed heavily on her spirit. She found it impossible not to remember the scornful glances from his kin during the preceding months. Her dad, Marcus, a sturdy figure whose palms bore the scars of decades tending the earth, glanced inside the doorframe. His grin beamed with pride, yet a trace of concern lingered in his gaze. "You appear stunning, sweetheart," he remarked, stepping in cautiously to avoid creasing his attire, a touch faded, yet spotless. Imani offered him a weak grin, appreciating his effort to bolster her confidence. She recognized that her father had strived to back her fully, despite his own lingering hesitations. But how could she find steadiness when Elias's folks, positioned among the attendees beyond, outright rejected her? Her devotion to Elias remained unshakable. However, the challenges they confronted grew more burdensome with each passing day. "Appreciate it, Dad," she responded, clasping his hand warmly. "Still, I keep dwelling on what's awaiting us beyond those walls." Marcus exhaled deeply, drawing nearer and resting a palm on her arm. "What truly counts is your mutual affection. The rest, you'll navigate it side by side." Imani inclined her head, even as she struggled to silence the sharp remarks hurled by Randall and Vivian Amesworth, Elias's parents, on multiple occasions. "She's only the landscaper's offspring," Vivian had declared, as though it sealed her fate. "He merits a suitable match, a peer in status," echoed the whispers from the family's acquaintances. Yet Elias had stood firm throughout. He consistently shielded her. He steadfastly selected her. That loyalty sustained her resolve, despite the persistent echoes of derision in her mind. The noise of the assembly quieting in the sanctuary signaled the approach of the ceremony. Her pulse quickened, and she drew in a steadying breath, striving for composure. Marcus, attuned to his child's unease, gave her fingers another firm press. "Elias adores you. Let that guide this day." Imani beamed, her vision blurring with heartfelt moisture, and agreed with a nod. She understood the truth in his words, but she couldn't dismiss the burden of scrutiny that would greet her upon stepping through. In the nave, Elias positioned himself by the chancel, striving to conceal his inner turmoil. He anticipated the confrontation ahead. He recognized the scheme devised by his parents, particularly his father, Randall. Randall had stated his position bluntly in confidence. "Wed that woman," he had intoned, his tone grave and measured, "and you're effectively severing ties with us. Disinheritance awaits, Elias. No reversal possible." Those words still reverberated within him. Vivian, his mother, more tactful yet no less strategic, had attempted to deter him with finesse. "Elias, imagine possessing all your aspirations," she had coaxed in a gentle murmur, "but tying yourself to her promises. Hardship. She isn't your counterpart. She lacks insight into our realm. Avoid letting this error derail your path." Elias, though, proved immovable. He cherished Imani and recognized the depth of their bond as far superior to any contrived alliance his relatives might prefer. He realized that wealth and influence could never substitute for his emotions toward her. Nevertheless, the familial strain pursued him relentlessly, like an unrelenting specter. As the chapel entrance swung wide and Imani emerged at the threshold, every doubt dissolved. Elias focused solely on her, rendering all else irrelevant. She served as his foundation, the motivation behind his readiness to challenge conventions. Imani progressed deliberately along the aisle toward him. The glint of unshed tears in her eyes mirrored the shared torrent of feelings between them. Seated prominently, Randall regarded his offspring with icy detachment. Vivian, bearing a mask of reluctant acceptance, maintained her poise, though her contempt for the newcomer was evident to those nearby. Imani sensed her footfalls as leaden, but upon locking gazes with Elias, an inner peace settled over her. There stood her refuge, her beloved. The connection was so vivid that it allowed her to overlook the assembly's assessing stares, veiled in courteous facades. Upon arriving at the platform, Elias clasped her palms in his, applying a soft pressure. "We'll face this as one, Imani," he murmured quietly. She assented, scarcely holding back her welling eyes. She was aware the path forward held trials. The officiant commenced the proceedings, yet prior to advancing to the pivotal exchange of promises, Randall rose abruptly from his place. The low buzz from the congregation swelled. Elias's brow furrowed, aware of what was transpiring. His father had no intention of letting the moment slip by without delivering his parting words. "Pardon me, Pastor," Randall cut in, disrupting the solemn flow of the proceedings. "Yet I believe it's my responsibility to make sure all those present grasp the significance of today's events." The bewildered pastor halted, glancing toward Elias for guidance. Randall, however, pressed on without pause. He turned to the assembled guests, his tone steady and commanding. "On this day, my son Elias is tying the knot with Imani, the daughter of our gardener. I'm not aiming to offend, but I must spell out the implications this holds for our lineage." Murmurs intensified as eyes turned to Imani, some offering compassion, others brimming with disapproval. "Elias has opted to disregard all we've sacrificed for him, all the foundations we've laid as a unit, just to wed someone so evidently beneath him." Imani sensed the breath drain from her body, yet before she could respond, Elias released her grasp and advanced. "Stop right there, Father," Elias declared, his words resolute and laced with restrained fury. Randall appeared unmoved by his offspring's retort. He regarded him with an icy detachment, familiar only to intimates. "Forgive me, my boy, but should you proceed, you'll forfeit your legacy, your standing in the clan, it all." No reversals allowed. Silence enveloped the space. Attendees froze, anticipating Elias's reply. All recognized this instant as a pivotal shift. Elias remained rooted before his dad, the gravity of his declaration bearing down like an avalanche. What had buzzed with hushed talk and sidelong looks now felt like an endless chasm, echoing solely with Randall's ultimatum. "You'll forfeit it all." Imani, at his side, watched with her pulse racing, eyes glistening with doubt, yearning for his gaze to steady her. Yet in that instant, Elias grappled with a storm of wrath and sorrow. Randall, on his feet, scrutinized his son through narrowed, strategic eyes, as though underscoring his dominance there. What escaped him was Elias's resolve, forged well prior to this hour. "Father," Elias uttered at last, his tone subdued yet unwavering. "I get how much this matters to you. I see the path you envisioned for me, the destiny you always pushed. But this is my path, and I'm selecting Imani out of deep affection. With her, true joy awaits me." Randall's brow furrowed, dismissing the sentiment as worthless. "Affection, is it?" he sneered. "Elias, such feelings don't swell fortunes. They don't unlock opportunities. They fail to earn the esteem required to expand our realm. Do you truly believe, with her at your side, you'll claim the prospects we've secured?" Vivian, Elias's mother, stayed in her seat, observing the unfolding with a mask of acceptance tinged by quiet grief. She understood retreat was impossible, and though she yearned for choices that uplifted their kin, the ache of this rift gnawed at her. "Randall, enough," Vivian murmured, seeking to ease the tension. "Not now, for this." But Randall ignored her. He insisted his son confront the cost of defiance. Elias, teeth gritted, met his father's stare head-on. The quiet hung oppressively. Every soul in attendance sensed the peril. This not mere domestic strife, but a covert battle for Elias's essence. "Your wealth and status aren't prerequisites for my fulfillment," Elias pressed on, his resolve hardening. "I've come to see your gifts as a lavish prison." He pivoted to Amani, clasping her fingers softly. "She grants me liberty. She's everything for my wholeness." Those declarations nearly summoned her tears. Elias had forever been her anchor. Now, confronting his own sire on her behalf, she grasped the depth of his commitment. His devotion ran profound, not shallow or passing, a vow to their shared tomorrow, no matter the headwinds. Randall balled his hands, visibly irked by his son's rebellion. From Elias's youth, he'd pictured a triumphant arc for him, brimming with triumphs and influence, steering the enterprise and elevating their legacy further. Yet that vision now disintegrated in his sight, undone by a woman who, in his view, brought nothing to the table. "You're courting disaster," Randall hurled, eyeing Elias like an outsider. "She'll drag you down, and when ruin strikes, don't seek our aid." The harshness forced Amani to bow her head. Elias, undeterred, gripped her hand firmer, vowing not to let paternal force shatter their hard-won bond. "In that case, no need to come crawling back," Elias countered calmly. Though his chest thundered, he appended, if risking it all for her means forfeiting everything otherwise, then so be it," Elias declared firmly. Randall shook his head in disbelief, stepping away while letting the microphone slip from his grasp, utterly vanquished in his bid to dominate the moment. Silence enveloped the room once more, though now it stemmed not from the father-son standoff, but from the guests' sheer shock at the bold spectacle. It was uncommon to witness a figure like Elias so boldly challenging his influential lineage. At last, Vivian rose to her feet. Approaching her son, her gaze brimmed with conflicting feelings. She'd wished to avoid this escalation, yet options had run out. Halting before him, she glanced fleetingly at Amani before fixing her eyes on Elias. "Elias," she murmured gently, her voice laced with restrained sorrow. "You understand the implications for your life ahead, right? You realize we can't proceed if you take this route." Elias met her stare, aware that her words sprang from a mother's deep affection, yet also from someone ensnared by rigid societal demands and traditions. "Yes, Mom," he answered more tenderly, "but this is the life I desire. Amani is my true family now." Vivian gave a slight nod, falling silent. She recognized her son's resolve was set, and though it wounded her deeply, she chose not to resist further. Casting a sorrowful glance at her husband, who had already retreated to his chair in resignation, she made her way back. With Vivian reseated, the ritual resumed, albeit under a lingering aura of awkward electric tension. Elias and Amani recited their promises, fully cognizant that their shared journey would prove arduous. Yet clasping hands and gazing deeply into one another's eyes, they understood that their bond and the sacrifices made outweighed any wealth or legacy. "I love you," Elias breathed as he slid the band onto her finger, his utterance carrying a vow for what lay ahead. Amani, tears glistening in her eyes, replied with a heartfelt grin that reassured her amid all the turmoil. They belonged right there. The proceedings wrapped up to scattered claps and hushed whispers. Those present grasped that the event transcended a mere union. It was a revolt, a bold affirmation of devotion that scorned authority and riches. As Elias and Amani proceeded arm in arm toward the doorway, they sensed that while obstacles might litter their path, They'd triumphed in the pivotal struggle, carving out their fate no matter the price. Stepping beyond the church's entrance, it dawned on them that united, no challenge was insurmountable. The initial months post-ceremony unfolded like a reverie for Elias and Amani. Though they'd abandoned much, their mutual presence sufficed initially. Their least modest flat in a humble district exuded coziness, brimming with affection and optimism. Amani handled the furnishings frugally, yet infused with her unique flair, infusing each space with her spirit. Elias, on the other hand, labored relentlessly, pursuing fresh prospects to forge their existence independent of his kin's influence. Still, this tranquility proved short-lived. Early indicators emerged as Elias observed former open pathways now barricaded against him. Firms he'd collaborated with before ignored his outreach. Once routine appointments became unattainable. Initially, he dismissed it as happenstance or the inevitable shift after severing family ties. Yet it didn't take long to discern a darker force at work. One evening following a botched appointment, Elias lingered solo in a cafe, contemplating his image in the glass. A sense of doubt washed over him, the burden of rebelling against his father at last bearing down. Suddenly, his cell buzzed. It was Trevor, a long-standing family acquaintance from his dad's firm. Trevor's demeanor sounded grave, tinged with sympathy. "Elias, I reached out so you learn this directly from me, not via rumors," he conveyed quietly. "Your dad's reached out to all contacts. He's ensured no ally or esteemed business will hire you. He's warned that backing you or Amani means crossing him." Elias's gut twisted. He recognized his father's clout but hadn't foreseen such extremes. "Is this retaliation?" he queried, though inwardly he grasped the truth. Trevor hesitated, as if weighing his response. "It's beyond mere spite. He aims to reclaim you, but under his conditions. He claims it can all mend if you abandon Amani and rejoin the fold." Elias gripped the tabletop, a surge of helpless fury swelling within. He perceived his father's view as mere leverage, yet another ploy to manipulate. But this wasn't commerce. It was his existence, his union, his devotion to Amani. "That won't occur, Trevor. I'm not forsaking Amani," Elias shot back, his tone resolute. Elias's hands shook with barely restrained fury. "Whatever he tries, it won't change a thing. I get it, but watch yourself, Elias," Trevor warned, his voice turning serious. "That guy's hell-bent on ruining every chance you get, and this feels like only the start." Elias ended the call, as if the floor had vanished beneath him. Confronting his dad was bound to bring fallout, but he hadn't pictured it hitting this hard. Elias, someone used to carving his own path, now saw himself caught in a snare beyond his grasp. His father held the clout to wipe out his standing in the corporate scene, and that threat was already sabotaging his ability to provide for his family. That evening, when he got back, Amani greeted him like usual, her face warm yet worried. But this time, her expression couldn't chase away his gloom. He dropped onto the couch in silence, his posture sagging, eyes distant. "What's wrong, Elias?" she murmured, settling next to him. He met her gaze, and after ages, words escaped him. She could sense the strain, the finances tightening, prospects fading. Admitting it stemmed from his father's scheme only deepened his powerlessness. "Dad's blocked me from jobs anywhere his reach extends," he admitted at last, tone dull. Amani stared quietly, processing the implications. She was aware Randall could stoop low, yet wrapping her head around such viciousness toward his own child proved tough. "So what does he after?" she pressed, suspecting the reply. "He demands I ditch you, return and follow his script like before." Elias exhaled sharply, laced with resentment. "Claims if I walk away, he'll restore it all, hand me the future he envisioned." A twist formed in Amani's gut. It wasn't the initial occasion she'd questioned if their bond was wrecking his world. She'd sacrificed plenty to stay with her, and silently, she dreaded the day that load might overwhelm him. Yet locking eyes, she spotted the unyielding resolve in his that had first captured her. "Elias, I won't beg you to keep sacrificing for my sake," she whispered faintly. He stared, stunned she'd entertain the idea. Grasping her hand with resolve like his dad's threats might steal her, he replied, "This isn't you demanding. It's my choice. I picked you, and I'd pick again endlessly." His words broke, yet his stare held steady. "He won't triumph. I won't abandon you, Amani." Tears traced her face, born not of sorrow but the devotion and fortitude he revealed. Still, they recognized their road ahead was shaky, with Randall's influence relentlessly hounding them. The ensuing weeks proved tougher still. Funds dwindled fast, and each slammed door amplified Elias's frustration. He hunted for gigs in every corner, yet whispers had circulated. Elias, the defiant heir, now untouchable. Even spots beyond his family's sway viewed his name as a red flag. Amani pitched in as best she could, but her talents and network fell short of steadying the ship. One afternoon, as Elias hunched over sparse job leads in their tiny kitchen, the phone buzzed once more. Not Trevor this round. It was Dad. "This mess doesn't need to drag on, Elias," Randall intoned, tone slick, yet laced with the icy command he'd long imposed. "Things can revert if you choose wisely." Elias clutched the receiver tight. Fury surged, though he fought for composure. "Your version of wise, Father, not mine. Amani's not going anywhere." A beat of quiet as if Randall weighed his next move. "Fine then, onward with the standoff. Let's gauge your endurance without a lifeline. When you're cornered, you'll know my door's open." Elias slammed the call shut, defeat weighing heavier than before. His father showed no signs of yielding, and neither would he. But the pressure was mounting, grinding him down. Amani entered then, catching his expression. "That was him, right?" she ventured, blending concern with acceptance. He dipped his head, speechless. Rising, he pulled her close. She leaned into him, and right there, they grasped the peril. Not merely their romance, but their fight against an unyielding force bent on driving them apart. Yet as Elias softly ran fingers through Amani's locks, a truth dawned. Dad could strip it all away, but the one irreplaceable piece. Days wore on, and the obstacles piled higher for Elias and Amani. Finances were tighter than they'd ever been, and job prospects for Elias were disappearing at a breakneck speed. Yet right in the heart of that turmoil, a piece of news landed that would transform their world completely. One afternoon, as Elias searched for work outside, Imani perched in the tiny bathroom of their place, clutching a pregnancy test. Her pulse raced wildly. The outcome was unmistakable. She was expecting. A whirlwind of emotions churned within her, pure delight at the thought of motherhood, clashing with dread over how it'd complicate their existing struggles. When Elias got back, drained and ashen from yet another fruitless day, he spotted Imani on the couch, eyes brimming with tears that weren't from sorrow this time. Puzzled and anxious, Elias hurried over and dropped to his knees before her. "What is it, love?" he inquired softly. Imani grasped his hands and offered a watery grin. "I'm pregnant, Elias." Time froze for Elias in that instant. His thoughts scrambled to absorb the revelation. A baby, their child. Even with the mess engulfing them, that revelation sparked a glow inside him he hadn't known in ages. Gradually, his lips curved into a grin, and moisture gathered in his eyes as well. "For real," he whispered, voice cracking with feeling. "We're becoming parents." Imani affirmed with a nod. In that embrace, Elias pulled her close, and they both surrendered to happy sobs. For the first time in what felt like forever, a glimmer of light pierced their gloom. This unborn little one, whom they hadn't even encountered, already fueled their resolve to push forward. But practicality crept back in quickly. The infant's birth would ramp up their demands, and they realized they needed to hustle and make ends meet soon. That's when Imani recalled her cherished skill, crafting unique cakes and sweets. She'd picked up baking as a child, assisting her mom in their humble kitchen setup. It brought her genuine pleasure and often wowed anyone who sampled her creations. Right then, it struck her that this ability might hold the key to their breakthrough. "Elias," she ventured one evening over their meal, "I've got an idea. I could try peddling cakes. It's not a fortune, but posting them online might bring in some cash." He regarded her attentively. He was well aware of how exceptional Imani's baked goods were, though the notion of turning them into a business hadn't crossed his mind. "You reckon it could work?" he responded, already sensing the possibilities. "I'd manage the drop-offs and we could set up a profile to showcase them." Imani beamed, thrilled by his support. That evening, they burned the midnight oil sketching out their strategy. Using his rudimentary tech skills, Elias whipped up a basic social media profile to display photos of the treats Imani started whipping up. She, meanwhile, tinkered with fresh flavors and designs, aiming to deliver standout items. The initial weeks dragged with modest success. They moved a few orders sporadically to nearby folks who stumbled on their page. Elias zipped around on his bike for transport since a vehicle was out of reach. It wasn't a windfall at the outset, but each return trip left him grinning. "Your cakes are a hit," he'd enthuse. One customer raved they're the finest she's ever had. Though pregnancy weariness and endless kitchen time wore on Imani, she sensed they were gaining ground at last. Each sale bolstered her assurance. Their cramped kitchen apartment had morphed into an impromptu baking hub, dusted with flour and sugar, infused with the inviting scent of fresh pastries in every nook. One day, en route to drop off for a steady buyer, Elias noticed a sharply dressed fellow lingering by the doors of a towering structure. The guy, eyeing the cake box Elias carried with evident curiosity, drew nearer. "Those treats yours?" he queried, flashing a warm grin. "Nah, they're my wife's," Elias answered amiably. "I just ferry them." The man inclined his head, scrutinizing the package. "I manage for a coffee chain," he explained, offering his name as David, from a prominent regional food outfit. "We're scouting fresh options for our spots, and these look impressive. Care to let us try some at our flagship shop? If they suit us, we might arrange steady orders from you." Elias stood stunned briefly. This was a genuine break. After all their hardships, was this the shift they'd craved? "Absolutely," he managed at last, buzzing with energy. "I'll swing by with a larger batch next week." That afternoon, bursting back home, Elias struggled to hold in his glee. "Imani, you won't believe what just went down." Elias burst into the apartment, excitement lighting up his face. "It's happening, Imani," he announced. "A supervisor from a coffee shop franchise is eager to try your baked goods. This might be our big break." Imani stared at him in astonishment, her eyes opening wide. "Seriously?" she responded, as if doubting her own ears. Elias confirmed with a vigorous nod, pulling her into a warm embrace. "We're making this work, Imani. This could be the turning point we've hoped for." That evening, as Elias and Imani held each other close on their modest bed, a renewed sense of positivity washed over them, the first in ages. They understood the path ahead remained tough, yet a glimmer of possibility had ignited, something absent until now. Most importantly, they were tackling it side by side. The week after, Imani crafted her finest treats, while Elias made sure the presentation was flawless. They delivered the samples to the franchise's central location, where David, the supervisor, was struck by both the exceptional flavors and the inspiring backstory. Just a few days on, the life-altering phone call arrived. "Your desserts are a hit," David declared. "We're ready to sign a deal for regular weekly supplies from you." Elias and Imani were speechless with joy. After endless hardships and compromises, this marked their first genuine chance to thrive. They were finally constructing a foundation all their own, one that even Randall couldn't dismantle. As Imani gently ran her hand over her rounding abdomen and Elias gazed at her with eyes brimming with affection and satisfaction, they realized that amid every obstacle, they'd triumphed in the greatest challenge, committing to one another and confronting whatever fate delivered. And with visions of a brighter tomorrow for themselves and their little one, the period following the agreement with the coffee franchise transformed Elias and Imani's existence in profound ways. Gradually, requests multiplied, evolving their humble side hustle into a thriving enterprise. Imani, her pregnancy now more evident, devoted extended sessions in the kitchen to inventing fresh flavors and guaranteeing each pastry's excellence. Elias, ever dependable, oversaw shipments, organization, and started handling the bookkeeping along with the influx of agreements fueled by the suite's rising fame. Yet prosperity brought its share of hurdles. The demands were wearing Imani down, and with her pregnancy entering its last phase, fatigue set in deeply. One afternoon, while leaning over the workspace to adorn a pastry for an upcoming shipment, a sudden twinge in her lower back halted her progress. She inhaled steadily, attempting to ease it, but the ache persisted. Elias entered right then, arms loaded with a hefty crate of ingredients, and upon noticing her strained look, he let it fall without hesitation. "Everything all right?" he inquired, hurrying to her side. Imani forced a grin to ease his mind, though the discomfort betrayed her. "It's probably just the little one kicking up a fuss today," she explained. Despite her visible strain, Elias's worry was clear. He recognized her remarkable resilience, but he also saw that her well-being demanded a break. He dropped to one knee next to her, clasping her hand softly. "Imani, you need to take it easy for a while. You've pushed yourself too far," he urged, his voice gentle yet resolute. She gave a slight shake of her head. "The orders are piling up, Elias. We can't afford to pause. This is keeping us afloat." Elias brushed her face lightly, his expression a blend of tenderness and anxiety. "I get that, but you and the baby come first, more than any dessert. I'll handle the remainder today. Just relax, okay?" Imani relented with a nod, acknowledging the warnings her body was sending. Elias led her to the couch and settled her in snugly. He then headed back to the kitchen, resolved to complete the batch alone. That evening, as Imani recuperated, Elias examined their budget and the pending commissions. Their venture was expanding beyond expectations, a source of delight but also a signal to tackle the mounting tasks. Bringing on assistants made sense, though their finances were still mending, limiting big outlays. Come morning, over their shared meal, Imani sipped her herbal brew and eyed Elias pensively. "I've got an idea," she began. "What if we scout for a little shop space?" "A shop," he echoed, glancing up from his reading. "Isn't that jumping the gun a bit?" Imani beamed, her gaze sparkling with zeal. "Not if we're expanding like this. We'd gain room to breathe, and with our spot, we could bring in help for the baking area. Relying only on the apartment won't fly once the baby's here." Elias pondered silently for a beat. Owning a storefront had long been a vision, but recent trials had narrowed his focus to mere endurance. Still, Imani's optimistic words made him see that aspiration was within reach sooner than imagined. He agreed, a grin spreading across his face. "You're spot on. Time to hunt for a spot. It'll be tough, but once we nail the perfect one, we'll move ahead." Manny mirrored his smile, a wave of deep relief washing over her. The journey up to now had been rough, yet suddenly a fresh outlook brimmed with opportunities lay before them. Those upcoming weeks buzzed with anticipation and anxiety. Elias managed shipments and kept searching for promising sites, as Imani, well into her pregnancy, continued handling customer requests from their house with sporadic aid from a kind neighbor. At last, after endless scouting, they spotted a cozy little shop front in the city center, adjacent to a bustling coffee spot. It was basic, yet equipped with all the essentials: a roomy prep area, space for serving folks, and a front glass that would draw in folks walking by. The cost for leasing felt reasonable, and a bit of hard work would surely shape it into a gem. "This spot's it," Imani declared with enthusiasm, wandering through the area, picturing the setups and it brimming with newly baked treats. "I envision everything, Elias. It'll feel like our second home." Elias observed her, a blend of admiration and affection swelling inside. After all their trials, they were crafting their very own venture, one that no force could strip away. "We'll pull it off," Elias vowed, clasping her hand. "This marks our big leap forward." Once the agreement was sealed and the keys secured, the upgrades kicked off. Progress crawled along since they juggled ongoing sales alongside prepping the venue for launch. Still, day by day, the site evolved, mirroring shifts in their world. One evening, as they applied fresh coats to the interior walls, Imani halted, resting her palm on her midsection. "Seems like the little one's thrilled as well," she remarked, beaming. "He's kicking up a storm right now." Elias hurried over, laying his hand on Imani's tummy to sense the tiny flutters. "He'll turn into an amazing pastry chef. Bet on it," he teased, his gaze brimming with warmth. Imani chuckled, though a brief twinge cut her mirth short. Elias's concern sharpened as he eyed her. "You okay?" She dipped her head despite the clear discomfort. "Probably just him getting comfy. But let's get back and unwind." Elias acted without delay. He recognized how draining those final stretches had been for them, particularly her. They packed up the supplies and headed home, aware that amid the to-do list, her well-being and the child's came first. The enterprise was gaining momentum, their blueprints advancing, and tomorrow was starting to solidify. Daily hurdles aside, Imani and Elias grew nearer to grasping their goals. The path hadn't been smooth, but sharing it had forged their unbreakable bond. And though echoes of old troubles lingered, the triumphs they forged through grit stood as powerful proof that devotion and determination could topple the tallest walls. Elias and Imani poured endless energy into polishing the final touches of their fresh bakery. Launch date loomed near, and while fatigue from extended shifts hung heavy, a thrill laced with jitters filled the atmosphere. Their vision of an independent operation was on the cusp of materializing, yet the strain to ensure a flawless debut pressed hard, amplified by the imminent arrival of their child. One dawn, while Imani wrapped up arranging the exhibit shelves in the revamped area, a fierce ache gripped her belly. Initially, she dismissed it as typical expecting mom twinges, but soon the intensity surged and dread swept through her. She froze, drawing steady breaths and bracing against the surface, hoping the spasm would fade. Elias, stepping inside from checking documents outdoors, caught sight of her hunched over, features strained in agony. "Imani?" he queried, alarm in his tone, rushing close. "What happened?" She forced a grin to ease his mind, but the hurt betrayed her. I believe our baby's eager to meet us," she managed, her words shaky. A rush of panic and joy hit Elias simultaneously. He'd anticipated the event soon, just not this abruptly. "Hospital now," he urged, snatching the car keys and gently supporting her to her feet. The drive there blended strain with elation. Imani focused on even inhales to remain composed, as Elias steered with one grip on the dash and the other entwined with hers. He stole frequent looks her way, aiming to confirm her steadiness, despite the knot of worry churning within, leaving him powerless. At the medical center, the team ushered them in promptly, wheeling Imani to the birthing suite. Elias, nerves frayed, remained glued to her throughout. The ensuing stretch dragged on, wearying beyond measure. Elias had never experienced a wave of profound fear, and raw feeling washed over him. Gripping Imani's hand tightly, Elias caught the strain and agony etched across her features, yet he also witnessed the remarkable resilience she displayed right then. His respect for his spouse deepened moment by moment. At last, following what felt like an eternity of waiting, an infant's wail shattered the heavy quiet in the delivery room. Elias and Amani exchanged glances, their gazes brimming with joyful tears and a sense of release. The physician raised the newborn, and as he settled her against Amani's body, a warmth they hadn't known in ages enveloped the space. "She's a girl," Elias murmured, his words cracking under the weight of feeling. Amani, worn out yet glowing, gazed at her little one with deep affection. She caressed the child's delicate flesh, murmuring endearments while tears streamed down her face. Elias bent closer, wrapping his arms around them, and briefly, everything beyond that spot faded away. They formed a complete unit now. Later that afternoon, with Amani dozing alongside the baby cradled close, Elias stepped outside for a breather. Even amid the elation surging through him, he recognized that responsibilities loomed. Their store neared completion for the big launch, though a handful of loose ends required attention. Gazing through the hospital pane, his mind drifted to his dad, the life he'd abandoned, and the twists of fate that brought them here. The clashes with relatives, the slammed opportunities, the routine battles, they'd all proven worthwhile for this achievement. Still, his father's presence haunted him faintly from afar. He realized Randall had exhausted every tactic to sabotage their happiness. Yet what the older man couldn't anticipate was how the bond between him and Amani outmatched any sway or authority his dad might exert. Uncertainty persisted, though. Had he really escaped his family's grip? Several days following their daughter's arrival, whom they called Zuri, a Swahili term for beautiful, honoring their roots, the store's official debut took place. Amani, in the midst of healing, oversaw the final touches remotely as Elias teamed up with a few trusted companions to ready the setup. Colorful balloons, fresh blooms, and an understated yet poignant banner graced the doorway. Zuri's specialty desserts. The launch proved triumphant. Local residents, loyal buyers who'd sampled the pastries earlier, and fresh visitors lured by the enticing scents and cozy vibes streamed into the modest space. Elias and Amani could scarcely trust their eyes. After endless months of effort, toil, and hurdles, their vision had materialized at last. But amid the celebration and flurry of activity, Elias spotted a known silhouette slipping in with the crowd. His father, Randall, had shown up. A tightness gripped Elias's gut. He had no clue what the man intended. Months had passed without a word between them, and their prior exchange had ended bitterly. Randall, clad in his flawless attire, made his way deliberately to the register, facing Elias's stern expression. "Elias," Randall uttered, his tone carrying less command than before, "I came to check on your progress." Elias met his stare, questioning whether this visit stemmed from sincerity or yet another ploy to underscore his supposed shortcomings. "Everything's good here, Dad," Elias responded steadily, despite the turmoil brewing within. "Your validation isn't required." Randall studied him briefly, and for the first time, Elias detected an unfamiliar glint in those eyes. Fatigue. The patriarch, once an emblem of unyielding dominance, appeared aged and exposed. "That's not why I'm here," Randall admitted, drawing in a steadying breath. "I've reflected on things. Perhaps I misjudged. I never imagined you'd accomplish so much." Elias stood speechless, caught off guard by the admission. He'd battled for ages to prove his independence, free from the family's wealth. Now, confronting him, his dad appeared ready to concede that point. "Hear me out, Elias," Randall pressed on. "I maintain this isn't the right route for you." But his delivery eased, a novelty to Elias's ears. "Still, I have to recognize your success. I'm here to offer my best wishes, regardless." Stunned, Elias gave a gradual nod. "Appreciate it, Dad," he managed, at a loss for more. Randall lingered briefly, as though more words hovered on his tongue, but ultimately he pivoted and exited the premises without a backward glance. Elias observed his departure, a blend of ease and bewilderment settling in. It might not resolve their tensions entirely, but for once, a faint spark of mending flickered. Back beside Amani, she greeted him with a warm smile. Zuri nestled securely against her. "What went down?" she inquired, reading his expression. "Dad stopped by." "To wish us well," Elias added, hardly believing it himself. Amani regarded him with astonishment but held her tongue. Instead, she reached out her palm, and as he gathered their tiny girl into his hold, he understood that no matter the challenges ahead, from that point on, nothing could ever drive them apart. They had forged a genuine bond, a life entirely their own. Sunlight filtered softly into the cozy bakery through the panes, casting a warm glow over the glass cases brimming with tempting treats that had turned Zur's signature sweets into a local favorite. It was just another ordinary morning, yet for Elias and Amani, each moment in this place served as a testament to their shared triumphs, overcome despite the heaviest challenges. Little Zuri, now a few months old, rested in an improvised bassinet at the rear of the store, cooing happily while clutching a tiny stuffed animal. Amani, her expression radiating affection and calm, busied herself in the back room, meticulously icing a bespoke cake for one of their loyal patrons. Out front, Elias greeted patrons at the register with a grin that went beyond mere professional pride. It conveyed a profound tranquility he hadn't known in years, having weathered his father's intimidations and those bleak spells of doubt. When success felt impossible, they had arrived at this serene chapter. Their eyes met across the space, and they shared a knowing smile, aware that the true victory lay not in the bakery's prosperity, but in crafting something authentic, unbreakable by outside forces. A household, a sanctuary, and a horizon brimming with potential. As the afternoon crowd started to thin, Amani settled beside Elias, gently caressing Zuri's tiny fingers as the baby dozed contentedly. "Remember those early days?" she inquired, a wistful curve to her lips. "It all felt so precarious, and yet here we stand." Elias inclined his head, those anxious times vivid in his mind. Endless questions had plagued them, nights without rest as they pondered if they could truly succeed. Still, he recalled the incremental wins, too, the instances when progress edged in, even amid relentless opposition. "It was tough going," Elias responded, clasping Amani's hand, "but every bit of it was worthwhile. All those hardships and hurdles led us right to this spot." Amani gazed at him, spotting in his stare the unyielding resolve and passion that had captivated her from the start. No matter the costs of rebelling against his kin, he'd never second-guessed his path. He'd embraced love, and that devotion had carried them through the stormiest periods. "I occasionally wonder what life might have looked like if we'd caved," Amani mused, her tone laced with quiet contemplation. "If you'd followed your father's demands, or if I'd allowed the strain to pull us under." Elias gave a subtle shake of his head. "Dwelling on alternate paths isn't for us. Our trials shape this reality, and I wouldn't trade a single piece of it. Just see Zuri," he added, gesturing toward their infant girl. "She proves every choice was spot on." The quiet that ensued carried a soothing harmony, born of their profound connection. They recognized their journey hadn't been smooth, but it was authentically theirs, selected in unity. Abruptly, the front door eased open with a faint chime, drawing their attention to Randall, Elias's father, stepping inside with measured steps. The electric strain his arrival once sparked was absent now. His features revealed an inner shift. He no longer embodied the domineering figure, intent on dictating his son's fate. Randall drew nearer to the counter, surveying the bustling haven, his gaze lingering on the slumbering Zuri. "What a lovely child," he murmured, his voice slicing through the hush. "She takes after her mom." Elias shot a brief look at Amani before affirming with a nod. He sensed the depth in his father's remark. It went beyond flattery, marking an acknowledgement he'd scarcely anticipated. "Thanks, Dad," Elias said, moving closer. Randall inhaled deeply, as though releasing a long-buried burden at last. I was mistaken, Elias. Mistaken on countless fronts, he confessed, his words tinged with unaccustomed openness. I convinced myself my vision was right for you, but pride clouded my judgment. Witnessing your accomplishments, the family you've nurtured, this thriving venture, it shows me that wealth and influence don't always top the list. A burden eased from Elias's heart. He'd longed for such an admission. While he knew reconciliation wouldn't happen overnight, this was progress, a move toward healing. My only wish was a joyful life with Amani and our little one, Elias said gently yet resolutely. I hoped you'd recognize that, truly grasp it. Randall dipped his head, regarding his son with blended remorse and admiration. I get it at last, and I'm sorry for the bind I forced on you. No demands from me today, just this. I'm proud of your strides. Moisture gathered in Elias's eyes, though he held it back, composure intact. He reached out, and after a brief pause, Randall clasped his hand. Simple as it was, that clasp signaled the dawn of fresh possibilities. Imani, observing the exchange, experienced a tranquility she'd never known prior. She realized Elias had shouldered his father's rejection for years, and witnessing that modest mending offered vital resolution for them both. Once Randall departed, the store returned to quietude. Yet now it carried an air of optimism. A fresh start emerged, not just for Elias and Amani, but also for ties to the kin he'd forsaken. Do you believe it'll be different going forward? Imi inquired, gently swaying Zuri in her embrace. Elias gazed at her, pausing thoughtfully. I'm not sure, he admitted frankly, but the key is that we're solid, and that remains constant. The rest will unfold in due course. Amani grinned, resting her head against Elias's shoulder, while they admired the dusk filtering through the pane. They'd begun from scratch, enduring unimaginable hardships, yet they'd prevailed, not chasing riches or acclaim, but through unity, rooted in shared affection and faith. And right then, cradling their child amid their modest enterprise, they understood real achievement lay not in possessions, but in the household they'd forged. A household that, despite every obstacle, thrived, demonstrating how devotion and resilience could overcome the toughest trials. The road ahead held unknowns, but Elias and Amani were certain that whatever arose, they'd press on side by side, and that stood as their supreme triumph. Enjoyed the tale. What city are you tuning in from? Drop a note in the comments. If the story resonated, show some love with a super thanks to help me craft more like it. Grateful for your kind backing. Can't wait to hear your thoughts below. Check out the 2 fresh life tales on screen. I swear they're worth it. Tons more awaits on my page. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Catch you next time in another heartfelt journey with warmth and admiration.